and welcome to all. Squid Game is definitely the hit series of the year 2021, and probably will be for next year as well if it ever gets a sequel. The South Korean show broadcasted on Netflix has indeed succeeded in catching and seducing viewers from all walks of life. Squid Game quickly became the most watched series in the world on Netflix because in 10 days, it dominated the top 10 of the streaming platform in 90 countries, including France and the United States. Such a craze from the public is necessarily due to the very positive reviews that the series has received, but especially to the word of mouth and the recommendation of the viewers between them. But since it's the show of the moment, we decided to dissect it for you and to give you its relevant analysis. Because if the show is unanimous about its quality, you'll be surprised by the number of mistakes we found. So make yourself comfortable because today, we are going to make you discover these false connections that you missed. Let's get started. Squid Game is the story of 456 people who are totally desperate and at the end of their rope, and who are literally ready to do anything to get out of the dead end. These tortured souls will have to face each other in a kind of competition, where the tests are in fact childhood games like tug of war or marbles. But there stops the only reference to children and their innocent amusements, because the Squid Game has nothing to do with a child's game. Indeed, from the start, the 456 competitors will quickly discover that losing a game also means losing their lives. Their first reflex is to leave the game to avoid the fate of the losers. But in front of the 45.6 billion South Korean won, that is to say 33 million euros, which was promised to the winner, the temptation was too big to bear. So we will find our valiant participants in this game for the least deadly and who will agree on the 9 episodes of this K-drama thrilling and full of suspense. Thanks to such a scenario, but also to a judicious choice of actors and a signed realization, the series Squid Game made a hit on Netflix, passing in less than 10 days after its launching to the first place of the most watched series on the streaming platform. Of course, we won't tell you more about the synopsis, in order not to spoil you if you haven't watched the series yet. But as the title of this video indicates, we're going to focus today on what is the dread of directors and editing teams, the false connections, these little mistakes and failures that some people have made a specialty of tracking down in movies and series. It can be an anachronism that slips in a subtle way in a scene, like an airplane that passes in the sky, for example, while you're supposed to watch a movie whose story takes place in the Middle Ages. It's not too bad after all, especially when you see the quality of the costumes and sets, meticulously crafted to take the viewer to another time. But the false connections can also take on even more unusual aspects and prove to be even more blatant, especially when it comes to big Hollywood blockbusters, whose shooting required millions of dollars of budget. For example, in Gladiator, there are many scenes where we can see technicians who thought they were out of the camera's field and whose modern clothes visibly clash with the period costumes used in the film. We will also see throughout the 155 minutes of the film a lot of small blunders incriminating extras and actors, not very concentrated at the time of the shooting. But we can say that the most flagrant mistake of this multi-Oscar winning film is visible in the scene of the Roman chariot fight. Everyone could see the mechanical propulsion system of the overturned chariot, and we could even see a gas cylinder and copper pipes. Fortunately for Gladiator, the sublime acting of the two superstars, Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix, was able to overshadow these errors and make this film a pure marvel of the seventh art. But what about the productions that can't afford such a dream cast? Well, the answer is simple. They will be very quickly categorized as Z movies or even elevated to the rank of illustrious rubbish. This brings us back to our famous South Korean series, which obviously benefited from a meticulous realization and a consequent budget thanks to Netflix. And if its breathtaking story was able to captivate the interest of the spectators, making it the most watched series in the world on the streaming platform, it is not at all free of defects. And some of them, as you'll see, are bigger and flashier than a beautiful brand new red Ferrari parked in the middle of a car graveyard. We don't really know if you've been paying attention or not, but we're going to list the biggest blunders we found in Squid Game, just to see if you've got an eye for detail. We start with the gross errors of identification of the participants in the game, who are all numbered from 1 to 456, and therefore all the easier to identify. But it must be said that the production of Netflix and the numbers, it makes 2. A good example is given to us with the player number 061, a young woman who was eliminated during the game number 2. The participant had indeed, unfortunately, broken her sugar cake while trying to detach the shape she had chosen, thus sealing her fate. But once liquidated by the terrifying costumed men, it is not her face that appears with the number 61 in the dashboard of the command center. As you can see, it is the picture of a young man that disappears from the screen, not the woman who had just been killed. This stupid misidentification will take place several times during the series, notably with participant number 88, who was an old man, but who was represented as a young woman in the dashboard of the Game Master, but also with participant 331, whose number is assigned to a young man on the screen, or with participant number 321. This fad with false numbers will be repeated elsewhere, as if the Netflix production doesn't know how to count at all. In one of the scenes of the 7th episode, the enigmatic master of the game wishes to have information on one of the players, the number 17, and will thus display his file on the screen. We can discover that this Squid Game participant is a former master glassmaker who had a very large experience in the glass industry. Too large, actually, because if you look carefully at his file, you will see that his experience extends from March 1897 to April 2020. This good worker would have accumulated 123 years of professional experience, which should also make him at least 150 years old. So unless he is the dean of Squid Game, the production has once again got the numbers wrong. But it must be said that it's not only the numbers that confuse the Netflix teams, because you'll see that even when it comes to spelling, they should take a crash course too. In the 5th episode, police officer Hwang Jun-ho goes undercover in the chief's office in order to get more information about the Squid Game. While searching the office, he finds some confidential documents with the mention top secret. But if you look closely, you will see what is written is top secret, which means absolutely nothing. It's hard for the Squid Game team to justify such a mistake, isn't it? But you haven't seen anything yet. Because if we could see that the directors had a lot of trouble with numbers and letters, it turns out that they are also uncomfortable with shapes and drawings. In the 3rd episode of the South Korean series, we are going to witness during a scene a false connection that you may have missed. In this episode, the participants are invited to the second game and will have to choose between 4 shapes, among which is an umbrella. But if you have a good eye, you will have noticed the difference in the shape of the umbrella between the 2 scenes. Indeed, at the beginning, the bottom of the umbrella is drawn in a straight line, but in the scene that follows, the same umbrella has curved edges this time. We understand that the director decided to include the second model in order to make the game even more difficult, but the least he could have done would have been to take care of this editing, to remove the first model that will not be used that could have avoided this stupid false connection. And speaking of false connection, here is one of the most hilarious of the whole series. During a scene of the 1st episode, the number 456, played by the Korean actor Lee Jung-jae, is enjoying his meal with his new friends. However, if you look closer, you will see that the actor who seems to enjoy his food did not eat a single bite. The actor was just pretending to eat, as you can see in the scene, taking an empty spoon to his mouth and pretending to chew. So it could well be that this dish is so insipid that it has put off the young actor, or simply that the Netflix production does not give much interest to the food of its teams. Still, seeing the hero of the series stuffing himself with empty food seriously discredits the series in the eyes of the spectators, at least those who notice this unusual false connection. The latter will have also certainly noticed this small blunder at the level of the smartphone of the participant number 456. In the last episode of the series, we can see that he has a Samsung S7 cell phone, but once arrived at the airport, the phone downgrades to Samsung S3. Of course, if you stayed glued in front of the TV until the 7th episode, it's because you are addicted too. And despite this anthology of monumental blunders, you are not ready to give up. But you should know that unless you are a Korean speaker, you have to be satisfied with a very rough translation of the series. Many scenes that are important to understand the plot are dubbed in a very sloppy way, which distorts the deep meaning of the sentences and dialogues, and thus the story as a whole. As you can see, the Squid Game series may have become a real social phenomenon, but it is literally full of false connections and editing and translation errors. In front of such an abundance of mistakes, sometimes unforgivable, one could think that we have reached the bottom. But nay, because the ultimate mistake of the Netflix production was to disclose a phone number of a private individual in its series and to have made it the number of the Squid Game organizers. The poor man to whom this number belonged was harassed day and night by an army of fans of the series, with sometimes more than 4,000 calls per day. Informed of the disastrous situation of the unfortunate man, Netflix could not do anything for him because it was finally only pure coincidence. And that's it for today. What do you think of the Squid Game series and the countless mistakes and false connections present through its 9 episodes? Tell us in the comments, and if you like this video, don't forget to put a like and subscribe and activate the notifications. See you soon for new discoveries out of the ordinary.